All right, lesson 19 gets us into credit cards and talking about just credit in general. So we're going to start here on page 167. I think it might be a good idea to hit pause first and just read those first three paragraphs just to see what we're talking about. So do that. All right, talking about credit scores. Hopefully you have an idea of what credit scores are or what they do. So everybody has a credit score, and you get a credit score by paying bills online or paying bills on time, and by having debt, which is kind of crazy. But if you never have a car loan or a house loan or a credit card, it's hard to build a credit score. You've got to have debt so that you can pay your bills on time so you can create a good credit score. It's kind of a weird thing if you think about it. So credit scores usually are between 300 and the mid 800s, which is states on page 167. And the lower your credit score, it's not good, right? It means you don't pay your bills on time and that kind of thing. The higher your credit score, the better off you're going to be in terms of securing a loan later. If you have a really high credit score, you're probably going to get a house loan at a lower percentage rate or a car loan at a lower percentage rate. So that high credit score can actually save you money in the long run. And that kind of, I just answered my second question of what's the purpose of good credit? Well, to get a lower credit, a lower, oh my gosh, percent, excuse me, I'm a little sick today, to get a lower percent on loans is, I think, the biggest thing on my credit. That's why I want good credit. So when I go to buy a new car, I have a lower percent on my car loan. All right, let's get into some problems here. Okay, on page 167, we are talking about purchasing a home. So if you notice in the directions here, they tell you that we're buying a $100,000 mortgage, and we're going to pay for this over 30 years. So they have already created our monthly payments for us, and you can see that in the middle column. So since we have the monthly payments, we can go ahead and figure out the total cost of the mortgage. And I want to talk through the 5% that's figured, and then I'll have you do 4% and 6% on your own. But when you look at the 5%, okay, so here's the monthly payment, $536.82. When you look at the work, this 30 comes from the 30-year mortgage. The 12 is 12 months in a year. And then the last $536.82 is your monthly payment. So it makes sense. If you pay $536.82 per month for 12 months in a year, times the 30 years you're paying for this, that will give you your total cost of your mortgage. So the total cost of your mortgage with a 5% interest rate is $193,000, well, $255.20, right? So right around $193,000, which is a lot. If you only borrow $100,000, you're paying almost double of what you borrowed. Okay, so go ahead and find the 4% and the 6% interest rate using that same process. Okay, with the 4%, 30-year mortgage, 12 months in a year, $477.42 per month, you're going to pay back a total of $171,871.20. With the 6% mortgage, 30 years, 12 months in a year, $599.55 per month, you get a total payback of $215,838. So remember that the 5% was $193,255.20. So we can compare and use these three to compare. Now there are two more questions at the bottom of page 167. I'd like you to hit pause and go ahead and answer those two questions right now. Okay, so how much more? Well, we subtract. So if I take my $215,838 and subtract my $171,871.20, I come up with a difference of $43,966.80. So over the course of 30 years, you will save yourself almost $44,000 if you have an interest rate of 4% rather than 6%. That's a lot of money, $44,000. Let's go to question number 3. Does the 2% higher interest rate result in just a 2% increase on the 100,000? Well, we found the actual amount right there to be $43,966.80. And if we think about the 2%, well, 2% of 100,000. So if you think about it's a 2% increase from 4 to 6, so a 2% increase, well, 2% of 100,000 is just $2,000. So was the actual interest that you paid only $2,000 more? No, it was $43,966.80 more, which is way more than a 2% increase. So you can see that a small increase in interest rate results in a large increase in actual interest paid. All right, so let's talk about page 168. We get into finance charges. So finance charges are also talked about as interest. And if you think about that, if you have a credit card and you buy things with it, right, which is the purpose of a credit card, at the end of the month, if you don't pay off everything you bought, they incur a finance charge. And the finance charge tells you like what percentage you're going to pay, right, as a charge for borrowing their money. And usually this is an interest rate. So, and it's always on the unpaid balance. So if you spend $1,000 on your credit card in a month and you pay off 800 of it, then only 200 will have the finance charge applied to it. You don't pay the finance charge on everything, just on the things you don't pay for at the end. All right. And our finance charge or interest is based off of the APR. So you will see APR all over the place, and that is the annual percentage rate. Notice the key word here is annual, right? That's a year. So if we wanted to know about a month, we have to find the monthly rate. Well, how do you go from a year to a month? Well, you divide by 12. Well, what if we want to go to a daily rate? Well, there's 365 days in a year, so we divide by 365. But everything starts with this APR, the annual percentage rate. So, for example, if we have an APR, APR of 16.99%, so this is the APR. And I wanted to find the monthly rate, right? Because maybe our credit card works on a monthly cycle. So I would take that 16.99%, which was the annual, and I would divide by 12 because I want it to be in terms of months. And if you take 16.99% and divide by 12, you get 1.4158%. So that is our monthly interest rate. Now, do remember, if we want to play with that number, we can't play with percents in terms of multiplying, dividing, that kind of thing. So, change percent to a decimal. So, 0.014158 would be our number to play with. And that is what we are going to use at the bottom of page 168 to answer a few questions. Okay, calculate the finance charge for a balance of $1,650 with an APR of $23.99. Now, we are going to assume this is a monthly finance charge on a credit card, even though it doesn't specifically say that. But because generally that's what it is, that's what we're going to deal with. So because they give us APR and we need monthly, right, the first thing we have to do is divide. So I'm going to go ahead and change my percent to a decimal. So I'm going to have 0.2399, and I'm going to divide that by 12, because that gives me my monthly finance charge, or my monthly interest rate, excuse me. So when I do that, I'm going to get 0.01999, and I rounded. If you want to take it all the way out, that's fine, but I rounded to 5 decimal places, which I think is okay. And then I'm going to multiply that by my balance, and my balance is $1,650. So when you do that, you get a finance charge of $32.98. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, right? APR turn into monthly, take your new monthly rate, multiply by your balance, and that will give you your finance charge. So I would like you now to do numbers 5 and 6. So hit pause, do 5 and 6, and then come back and get the explanation. All right, in number 5, we take our rate, so 0.1599, we divide it by 12, and that comes out nicely of 0.013325. I multiply that by 1650, and I get a finance charge of $21.99. And now when you look at number 6, the difference. What difference did the lower APR make? So the lower APR was what? It was 8%, which is pretty significant. And when you take the difference, so $32.98 minus $21.99, we get a difference of $10.99. And you may say, well, that's $11. That's not too bad. Well, yeah, it's not. I mean, you can do a lot with $11. But this is 1 month. So think about if you did this the same for every month in a year. So multiply, let's just say $10 for easy figuring. $10 times 12, that's $120 a year. You know, how many years are you going to live, right? If you do this every month, that's a lot. It can really add up. So you want to, the lower the interest rate, the better, because that means your finance charges, if you have them, will be lower. All right, let's call that video number 1 for fun.